Hey everybody, Steven here, and today I'm reviewing the Gigabyte GO27Q24G WOLED monitor. The naming here is really important because if you take off the G at the end of the name with this, it's going to be a QD OLED panel. Specs may look similar just with the base specs, but they are going to be different panels. And when you get into the more in-depth specs, they will be completely different monitors. So this is the GO27Q24G. You have to have the G at the end of this. For the structure of the video, I'm going to be covering the specs. In panel menu, I'm going to look at the command center. We're going to look at my test results, what you can do with consoles, and then I will get into what I like, potentially don't like, and the gray area before wrapping the video up. With all of that being said, let's get into the specs. The Gigabyte GO27Q24G is a 27-inch WOLED monitor with a 1440p resolution, 240Hz refresh rate, and a 0.03 millisecond gray-to-gray response time. This is going to be an LG WOLED. This is an MLA+, which is Micro Lens Array Plus panel. This, if I was to take off the G and look at that other monitor, that one's going to be a Samsung QD OLED panel. So we even have different panel makers between these two. Here we do have the real black glossy panel coating with anti-reflective zero haze optical layer. I like this one because if you look at the previous MO27Q2A, which is a third gen Samsung QD OLED panel that I reviewed, that one has an extremely glossy panel to it. This one, with the new coating, it reduces that glossiness a lot. It still is really glossy, which means the colors are going to pop, but it's not as reflective as the MO27 when you're looking straight at the panel. They're both really reflective if you're looking at them from a side angle, which I'm showcasing here, but straight on, which is how most people are going to be using this monitor, it is far less reflective, so I really like this coating. And since I'm already kind of comparing the two monitors in terms of the physical features, the molding is the same on the two, but the GO27 has a frameless design where when you look at the MO27, it's not completely frameless because you have part of the molding on the bottom of the panel. That's actually where you find the menu button on the bottom. With this monitor, it's actually on the back, kind of slightly to the right of middle side on the molding. The MO27 is actually slightly thicker on the back as well. I'm assuming that has to do potentially with cooling, which both of these are passively cooled. And then the GO27 is just slightly more slim. Outside of that, again, these are going to be identical. Jumping back into the main specs though, this has a typical brightness of 275 nits, a peak brightness in HDR of up to 1300 nits. And from what I've seen, this has true 10-bit color, but I don't really have confirmation on that. There's no information on the product listing saying it's that. It may be 8-bit plus FRC, but the other stuff that I'm seeing is it is potentially true 10-bit color here. And then this does have the VESA Display HDR True Black 400 certification. This has a 1.5 million:1 contrast ratio. This covers 99% of the DCI-P3 color gamut. And then because this is an LG panel, this actually has the WRGB subpixel layout instead of just the regular RGB. With this, it's one of the reasons why you're going to have the higher peak brightness when compared to a QD OLED, which is going to use the RGB subpixel layout. And that one typically uses the triangular arrangement for that. I'm not going to get into the details. Generally speaking, this does have the higher peak nits, but potentially more text fringing. I'm going to come back to that later on in the video. For ports, this has one DP 1.4, 2 HDMI 2.1, one USB-C with DP alt mode, so you can use this as a video input, and the USB-C does deliver 15 watts of power, and then you have a headphone jack with this. For the physical adjustments, this can raise and lower 130 millimeters. This can swivel to the left and right 15 degrees. this can tilt 5 degrees forwards and 21 degrees backwards, and then this does pivot 90 degrees but only in one direction. If you wanted to mount this though, this is compatible with a 100mm by 100mm VESA pattern. Inside of the box you're going to get the monitor, the arm, the base, the power cable with brick, the DP cable, user manual, and then this does have a factory calibration report. I like when monitors include that. And this does have a 3-year warranty, which is pretty standard for OLEDs at this point, but you are covered for burn-in with that. Now, because this uses the external power brick, that probably is the explanation behind the different thickness or sizing with this molding on the back compared to the MO27, the QD OLED panel, which didn't have an external power brick. The last thing I did want to cover here is some of the certifications and other features that this does have. They do a really good job. Gigabyte is comparable, in my opinion, to ROG with the extra features and certifications that they get for their monitors. This is G-Sync compatible. We do have a FreeSync Premium Pro support, and then this has OLED VRR anti-flicker. So if you're running into issues really geared towards consoles with flickering, or perhaps in some games on PC, you can enable that. This is also UL certified for flicker-free, discomfort glare-free, and low blue light. On top of that, they do have the Clear MR certification from VESA. This has a 13,000 rating. I'm not going to get into that, but I will have that information in the description if you want to look into it. This is a mode that you can enable. It'll be ultra clear. I'll talk about that once I get to the in-panel menu. But this, from what I've seen, can be really geared towards consoles and then certain games on PC where you do want clear motion, where maybe you are getting more motion blur within the game. But this just speaks to them going that extra mile when it comes to testing and verifying things with their monitor, their version of this particular panel, and I like that fact. Shifting over now to the panel menu, the menu button, it's on the right hand side. It's kind of close towards center, but it will be on the back of the monitor. It won't be on the bottom here. With this, you have the center joystick, which is going to control the OSD. On the right hand side, you have your tactical switch, which by default just changes the resolution and size. So quick access to that. You can change this in the Game Assist tab. I'm going to showcase that here in a minute. On the left side of the joystick is just a power button. That center one, you do have a quick access menu item attached to pushing this to the top, bottom, left, and right. You can change those as well in the panel menu. Clicking the menu button in once brings up this quick access menu. At the top you have settings, which is your overall settings. To the left you have OLED Care, the bottom is power off, and then the right is Game Assist. I will be coming back to OLED Care and the Game Assist tabs after I cover the main menu. For the main menu though, you have the following tabs: Gaming, Picture, Display, Picture-in-Picture / Picture-by-Picture, System, Language, and Reset All. For the gaming tab, you have ultra clear, black equalizer, super resolution, low input lag, display mode, and VRR, variable refresh rate. With the ultra clear, you have to turn VRR off, then it will allow you to enable that. That is the mode that I was talking about earlier. Gigabyte, out of the other brands that I've reviewed, either the same QD OLED panel for a monitor that is close in spec to these, or actually some other monitors with this same panel, Gigabyte gets this certification where those other brands do not. So they have access to this mode. So you can get this with a Gigabyte monitor. From what I've seen, almost all of the other ones, if it is this same panel, you may not actually get that mode. Now with that, it's supposed to clear everything up. It's hard for me to record because it doesn't match the shutter speed of my camera. So it looks like there's almost like black frame insertion, but it's just because I can't match the shutter speed, so it doesn't really look good. But to me, it's kind of like an anti-flicker mode, but it's not quite. This is a mode where if you were struggling with clarity though, you could use it So again, I like the fact that the option for this is there. For the display mode, you have full, aspect, 1x1, and then the following sizes that you could change this over to if you wanted to. 22 inches, 23, 23.6, and 24. Remember, the tactical switch is actually set to 24 by default. So you just push that button and it changes over to the 24-inch size for you. And with that, there's customization that you can do in the Game Assist tab that I'll talk about here in a little bit, because by default it is 1080p, but you have to go through the Game Assist tab to adjust that. If you turn off VRR, you will have access to these other screen sizes. And with that, you have 240 Hertz, 144, 120, and 60 for your options in regards to the refresh rate. Now with VRR, it's either on or off, but here is where you will find the OLED anti-flicker. For this, you have off, middle, and high. Next is the picture tab, where you have your picture presets. I like how Gigabyte organizes this because you can just choose the picture preset and then make the adjustments within this same menu. You don't have to go to a separate menu. I'm going to showcase the picture presets here in a second, but in terms of what you can adjust, here you find brightness, contrast, 6-axis color, color vibrance, sharpness, gamma, color temperature, and color space. So now let's backtrack and actually look at these different picture presets. It's going to look slightly different in person, but here at least it gives you a general idea of what these would look like. Here you have standard, FPS, MOBA, RPG, racing, movie, reader, sRGB, which is actually a lot darker in person. My camera's brightening it up. Then you have custom, which gives you all of the options you can adjust. And last, you have eco. After this, you have the color temperature, starting with cool, then natural, normal, warm, and then last you have user, which allows you to adjust the RGB color values. Next up, we have the color space, starting with native. Then you have Adobe, and last is DCI-P3. After this, we have HDR. You have HDR, which is just the normal default mode. Then you have HDR game. HDR movie. HDR vivid. And then last you have HDR Peak 1300, and this is my favorite one. This is the one that I've used the most and will be showcasing the most in this video. Now the cool thing with this Gigabyte monitor and the other ones is they actually give you control over the HDR settings here. So now you're just going to watch me make adjustments. You can make adjustments to the brightness, the contrast. You have light enhance, which has 3 levels. Hyper nits is only available in the HDR Peak 1300. This is off, medium, and high. You have dark enhance with this too, which has 3 levels. And then last, you're going to have the shadow boost. So there is a lot of customization that you have with HDR, which a lot of panels just don't offer. After this, you have the display tab. Here you find input, RGB range, and apply picture mode. Big thing here is I just wanted to confirm you can use the Type-C for a video input, as it is listed here as an option. After that, you have the picture-in-picture / picture-by-picture tab. Here for picture-in-picture, the adjustments that you can make. You have a source, picture-in-picture size, you have the location, display switch, and audio switch. For the size, it's basically small, medium, large, and then for the location, it's going to be any of the 4 corners of the screen. One thing to point out here is that you can use the Type-C input, since it is a video input, with this picture-in-picture mode. For the picture by picture though, with this source, the USB-C will be grayed out. That should change if you go to mobile right, because I'm assuming it's thinking with whatever Type-C device, it's going to be a mobile-based device, and that's why it doesn't allow for it. With the picture by picture mode, you have aspect or full, so some adjustments with that. I didn't go too deep into these settings, but the options are there. And then you'll have display switch and audio switch. Last, you have the system tab. Here you find audio, OSD settings, quick switch, and other settings. Big thing for the audio, this doesn't have built-in speakers, so keep that in mind. But for the quick switch, this is where you can change the quick access options for the joystick, for the menu, for the up, down, left, right here. The options are ultra clear, black equalizer, volume, input, contrast, brightness, and picture mode. Last, you have the other settings. Here you will find resolution notice, input auto switch, auto power off, LED indicator, Type-C compatibility, HDMI version, which you have the 2.1, but you can choose 2.0 if there's some type of issue with a device and it's just not compatible with the 2.1 or it's causing problems. Then you have HDMI CEC, and then last you have DSC, which is either auto or off. With this, technically the bandwidth here is fine, especially for the HDMI 2.1, but for DP 1.4 it's still fine. It's almost just like a little extra headroom if you're playing 1440p with HDR at the 240 hertz, potentially upscaling to 4K, and maybe it's an issue there. It just gives you that extra headroom, but you can turn this off unless you're noticing issues. You could leave it off if you wanted to. I just leave it on auto. I don't want interruptions with my gaming experience. But again, here, it's one of those things. I looked into this. I was like, why is this even here? And it's just kind of like a precaution with the monitor so that you don't hit that upper limit and it causes a problem. So now let's backtrack to the OLED Care features. Here you have status and settings. Status just lets you know the overall usage time and the amount of pixel cleans that this has run. This uses AI, so you don't actually have to run the pixel clean unless you just want to enable it. It takes care of that for you. I like that feature because it's one less thing that I have to think and worry about. After this, you have pixel shift. This just shifts the pixels a couple pixels over on a certain time interval. So essentially you don't really have a static image on screen for very long. This is either on or off. After this, you have APL stabilize, which is the average picture level stabilize. This has low, middle, and high. You do not have off with this though. This is adjusting the overall picture brightness. So because I can't turn this off, it does affect my results with the on-screen response time testing tool where I'm testing out the response time. I'm going to talk about that again when I get to the test results. But here, again, you just have low, middle, and high. After that, you're going to have sub logo dim and corner dim. These are both either on or off. For the sub logo dim, if the monitor is picking up on a static icon or logo, it will actually dim those pixels. For the corner dim, if you have a window on screen, it's going to dim the edge of that window so that you're not getting that harsh contrast between the background and the window. After this, you're going to have a brightness control. This is going to dynamically lower the brightness in areas of the screen where you're getting prolonged static imagery or content. So an example would be like a taskbar or a window that's up or desktop icons, things like that. It will actually pick up on that and then start to drop the brightness. Last, here you have tone control. This one's going to be a little bit more subtle. So it's dynamically adjusting tonal mapping, luminance distribution, image uniformity. So here it's going to be harder to tell if this is on or off, but I like that they have these features because with that QD OLED I reviewed, it actually didn't have these last two options. So you're getting more OLED Care features with this monitor or panel over some of the other ones. And then last here, we're going to go back to the Game Assist tab. Here you find game info, which you can have this so the game timer is up. You can see the refresh rates, and then you can change the info location. You have crosshair and a bunch of different options for that. Tactical switch, which I'm going to really showcase here in a second, and then flash dimming, that's on or off. And for the flash dimming, essentially if there's any bright flashes on screen, it would reduce that flash. So whether that's a game or content, if you are prone to seeing that and you don't like that when it is that bright flash, this would help that. Now looking at the tactical switch, you have resolution switch and the options there, and then key binding. We'll look at that here in a second. But for resolution switch, display preset. So here we have 1440p, and then it tells you the aspect ratio 16:9, 1080p by 16:9, or you can go 1280 by 960, 1024 by 768, 1280 by 1024, and it tells you the aspect ratio. Confirmation notice, if you want to enable that. You have display position and then background color as well, which we will actually look at here in a second, because that is a pretty cool feature that this has. I haven't seen that adjustment where you can change the background color when you're scaling down to a smaller size on an OLED monitor. So that is a really cool feature. Now, when I switch this over to 1440p from the 1080p, but the 24-inch size, then I had the options of 240, 180, 144, 120, and 60 hertz for the refresh rate, where with 1080p, it locks it into 240 and 180 hertz for some reason. I did check on consoles though, and it will do 60 and 120 hertz, but you lose a variable refresh rate. One last thing I did want to point out here, I've been talking about the 24-inch size, but if you look, it also has the 27-inch size. So you could click it over to 27 inches, and if you wanted to go from 1440p to 1080p or one of the other resolutions and aspect ratios, you could switch it to that as well. Now with this, for the display position, you have bottom, center, and top. The camera's off to the side because I was just filming the menu here, but you can still see that it is moving. But then after that, you have the background color, and you have a handful of different options with this, 7 total, but you can literally cycle through these. Again, I've not seen this on any of the other OLEDs that I've reviewed that have this 24 or 22 inch option with it where you can scale down the size. This thing is pretty cool. Next up, I'm going to cover the Gigabyte Control Center. With this, it's going to be the footage from the MO27 that I reviewed, because all of this is going to be the same. It's just a different monitor, but in terms of what you find within this app, everything is going to be identical. Next, we have the Gigabyte Control Center. This allows you to make a lot of the adjustments that you would find in the in-panel menu from this application. Here, we have the Sidekick. For the tabs, you have a general setting, display setting, game assistant, and then the refresh settings. For general setting, this is what you're going to find. Basic stuff here in terms of changing the source. You can adjust the quick access menu options, and then you can adjust the OSD. For the display setting, this is where you're going to make any adjustments to the picture presets. It's all lined out here. If you look at this and you're like, why don't you have overdrive or local dimming? You wouldn't find that on any OLED because it doesn't need it, so those are not going to be options. If you had a mini LED display, you would get the local dimming, and then any other regular type panel, IPS VA, then you could adjust the overdrive. And then gaming assistant, this is where you can adjust the crosshair, aim stabilizer, but you could also create any type of hotkey over here if you wanted to as well. And then last, we have the refresh settings with this. So you've made some adjustments, and then you just need to refresh everything so that it is up to date with the adjustments that you've made. Next, let's get into my test results, starting with the SpiderX color calibration tool. The claim here was 99% coverage, DCI-P3. On one portion it says saturation. Gigabyte does this where they interchange these words, which just leads to confusion for the consumer, because when you look at a spec breakdown and it's showing you color saturation and gamuts and space, these are all different things, which I'm going to talk about that here in a second and clarify that. But Gigabyte actually just interchanges these words, and so that again just leads to confusion. I did not get the 99%. I'm testing color gamut though. So here we have the native Adobe and DCI-P3. I did check the sRGB one because for that picture preset, it's essentially a color space or color gamut mode. Here for native though, we have 100% coverage of the sRGB, 91% of the Adobe RGB, 94% of the DCI-P3, and then 89% of the NTSC. That's still a really good result with this. It matches the QD OLED that I reviewed for the most part. With Adobe here, we have 98% coverage of the sRGB, so that comes down. 89% of the Adobe RGB, 87% of the DCI-P3, and then 84% of the NTSC, so really they all come down, but specifically with sRGB, generally speaking, for most modes, I get 100% coverage when I run this test, so that one is a little bit more interesting. And then we have DCI-P3. Here I have 100% coverage of sRGB, 89% of Adobe RGB, 94% DCI-P3, and then 87% of the NTSC. So closer to native, but native has the better result here. So that's the one I would recommend most people use. And then last, this is the sRGB picture preset, which and then last we have the sRGB picture preset, which seems to also be an And then last we have the sRGB preset, which seems to be also the sRGB color gamut or color space mode. With this, the result is 98% of the sRGB, 75% of the Adobe RGB, 74% DCI-P3, and then 70% of the NTSC. The question I usually get is, why would I choose this mode? This is going to be specific to any workflow stuff that you have that needs this specific color gamut or color space to work in. For Premiere Pro or Photoshop, where you're editing something and you need to actually dial it in that particular color gamut or color space. Now, this happens with a lot of other brands. I mean, Best Buy's listing for this says color gamut. Gigabyte says color saturation, and I've seen on other listings it'll say saturation, gamut, and space at various points. They're all intending to use this word most likely for color gamut. This is going to be the range of colors that a system can display, reproduce, or capture. It's a 2D representation of the range of colors in a color space and can be thought of as the borders of that space. Color space, a mathematical model that defines how colors are represented in terms of numbers. Each color space has a defined gamut, which refers to the specific range of colors it can represent. And then saturation, a fully saturated color contains only a single wavelength and is considered the purest form of the color. So again, these are going to be different things, but most of the time they're intending to say color gamut. They're just interchanging these words when they shouldn't, because it can lead to confusion. This is still a very vibrant panel. I did not get the 99% that they're claiming though. I was off by 5%, and that is the largest margin that I've seen in terms of what my test result gets compared to what is claimed. Comparing this to other OLEDs that I've tested, this is still a solid result here. It's not the best, it's not the worst, it's kind of right in the middle. And again, this is still a very vibrant panel in terms of the colors. It's just they were claiming 99% and I am 5% off from that. That's a bit of a bummer. Next, we have the results from the on-screen response time testing tool. This is the one that I talked about earlier with the average picture level adjustment for OLED Care. Because you can't turn it off, I think these results could be slightly better if I could turn it off. But because I can't, it kind of affects the results here. The good news is, even with that, this is extremely fast. When we're looking at the average perceived time, it is 0.9. This is one of the best results that I've had with the testing tool that I use for response time across all of the OLEDs that I've reviewed. Now we have some numbers that jump, and that's where I think the APL is affecting it. But when we look at the average, still, even with that, it is really good. So for the perceived response time, this would show up as ghosting if we were playing a game or running a UFO test, which is a way that you can actually showcase and test ghosting. And so with that, the little UFO guy on that particular test, you would actually see a big trail behind him. That is the ghosting. When you have an OLED, because the response time is so fast, you just don't see that ghosting. With a UFO test or in gaming, the pixel response is incredibly fast. Here, the best was 0.5, the worst was 1.4, and then the 0.2550, so the black to white to black transition, was 2.4. Across the board, very good. Again, I think it would probably have a better result if we could turn it off, but the fact that it is still this good with the inability to turn the APL off says to me that this is a really fast panel. For the RGB overshoot, we're seeing some numbers here. This would lead to inverse ghosting. So instead of a trail behind the little UFO guy, if you're running a UFO test, the ghosting would actually start to go inside of the UFO. So you see, again, inverse ghosting, not trailing behind, actually trailing into the guy. That would show up as you're playing an FPS game. You would actually start to see the blur go into the character model. So we don't really want to see any numbers here. We have some, but when I ran the UFO tests, I didn't see anything here. These numbers are so small, and again, I think it is related to the APL situation. You're not going to have any inverse ghosting. The visual response is taking the perceived response time and the RGB overshoot, and then it is averaging those two out. Here, the average rating is 95.76. It's not the highest, it's not the lowest for the OLEDs that I've tested. It kind of sits in the middle, maybe the upper middle area across the 30 plus that I've reviewed at this point. The one thing here, it is very consistent with the numbers on this, even again with that APL issue. So I think slightly faster than this. I'm gonna say if we didn't have this, we may see above 96 or 97 with the visual response rating. We wouldn't have any numbers on RGB overshoot, and then any of the ones or slightly above 1 on the perceived response time would actually be sub 1 millisecond. So that's where I think it's affecting it in that regard, especially because we can see it's affecting it when it's getting closer to white, where the average picture level is actually going to have an effect. So overall, extremely fast, but that's how OLEDs are. They are just extremely fast across the board. This one lives up to that. Looking at consoles now, you have all of the options here. So this can upscale to 4K. You do have the option for HDR and variable refresh rate with that. So you can upscale to 4K, you can do 1440p or 1080p. You'll still get variable refresh rate, you'll get HDR, so you get the 60 or 120 hertz across the board. And this is going to be the same for the Xbox Series X, which I'll show here in a second. You could do 720p if you wanted to. For both consoles, you do have the auto low latency mode as well. So we're getting VRR, we're getting auto low latency. With the PlayStation 5, you can adjust the video transfer rate. That's only in 4K though, so do keep that in mind. For the Xbox Series X, all the same options here. The difference with the Xbox Series X is it does have the option for Dolby Vision, which is a proprietary type of HDR. You don't have that here, so no access to Dolby Vision. But outside of that, again, you're getting all of the options. 4K, 1440p, 1080p, 60 or 120 hertz, variable refresh rate, and then you get the auto low latency mode. So with consoles, you are covered across the board. So now that I've covered the specs, in-panel menu, OLED Care features, what you can do with the control center, my test results, and what you can do with consoles, let's get into what I like about this monitor. Now the hard part with reviewing OLEDs, especially at this point because I've reviewed over 30 of them, I believe, is that OLEDs are already really good in terms of their incredibly fast response time, the infinite black levels, you have super vibrant colors, you have a really good HDR experience, there's really good motion clarity. That's just kind of across the board when it comes to OLEDs. So now it's going to come down to what the panel type is, the calibration that the company has with that particular monitor, and then the feature set that they're going to give you with that monitor. So for this one, this is an LG WOLED panel with MLA Plus technology, rather than the one I've been referring to, which is the MO27. That one's a Samsung QD OLED panel. So here we have two different panel types and then two different panel makers. So with this, when it comes to a WOLED, you're going to typically get a increase in peak nits with that, and that does have this, and then you usually have a increase in the color gamut, which with this one, that's a bit of a tricky one because my testing tool didn't actually show that, especially against what they were claiming, but generally speaking, you are supposed to get that with a WOLED over a QD OLED panel. Now, with all of that kind of set aside, what does this monitor, this panel, do really well? I want to start with HDR. SDR already looks really, really good. You're not going to have any issues there. It is, to me, very comparable to any of the other OLEDs that I've reviewed in terms of the SDR experience. Looking specifically at HDR here, one of the things that Gigabyte is giving you is the customization that a lot of other panels don't give you, meaning you can adjust and tweak the HDR. There are options to do that. Some other brands out there, it's just, hey, this is HDR, it's either on or off, that's it. Or maybe they give you some presets, maybe they give you movie and game and vibrant, but then no ability to adjust it beyond that. With this panel, you actually have the ability to adjust it. The brightness and some of these other settings like light enhance and dark enhance, things like that. Now for me, the HDR True Black 400 mode is my favorite. Everything with that just seems slightly more crisp in terms of the detail and the overall vibrancy and the look that you're getting compared to the other ones. It's not a massive difference, but for me it's noticeable enough that I do prefer that mode. And even with that one, you can make adjustments to it, which I like. Sometimes you may get a mode like that, and let's say you can adjust the other HDR options, but you end up not being able to adjust that particular one. Here you can. I like that fact. And beyond just HDR, you also get a ton of customization for SDR as well. The level of customization is a big draw for this panel. Other panels still give you decent amounts of customization. To me, Gigabyte and ROG are up there in terms of giving you some of the most robust amount of options that you can change. I would throw Innocent in there as well. They do really good. That's what I like to see. Now, for some people that may be overwhelming. With this, out of the box, the calibration, if you just chose a picture preset, you're going to find one that you like. For everybody else, you may want to go that next step and start to customize this and really fine-tune this to your liking. But I think for a lot of people, if that intimidates you, you don't really have to do that unless you want to start going down that rabbit hole. Again, out of box, I think one of the picture presets is going to be good enough for you that you just set it and forget it. Now, beyond the visual side, you're also getting other features like the OLED anti-flicker, which helps with consoles. It can help on PC, but usually that's going to be something where on a console I may notice it more. For me in general, the only time I notice any flicker on an OLED panel is usually within a game menu. And that tends to be rare. There's a handful of games that I notice that, but it's not enough for me that I'm going to enable that. If I'm seeing it on console, it may stick around more, just depends on the game. That's where I may want that option. You also get the VESA Clear MR 1300 certification, so you're going to get that ultra clear option if you're noticing that maybe at 120 hertz, the motion clarity just isn't to your liking, you have that other option. They have that other certification. That's another thing that Gigabyte is really good at doing, like ROG, which is really having this third party tested. So you have these other options for OLED anti-flicker and motion clarity, which this already has really good motion clarity, but to dial in the performance. I like seeing that. And speaking of consoles, the fact that this compared to other monitors with similar specs, this is allowing you to upscale to 4K, do 120 hertz with HDR and variable refresh rate, where with some of these other ones, you may do 4K, but you can only do 60 hertz. If you're locked in at 62, you're still going to get the HDR and the VRR, but you just don't have that upper ceiling of 120 hertz if the game supports it. And some other ones, they don't even let you upscale. You're stuck at 1440p. Now, visually, how much of a difference is that going to make? That's going to be dependent upon what you're going to see with your eye. But I like the fact that the options are there. Essentially, you're getting every single option with the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X outside of the Dolby Vision, like I mentioned, which is a proprietary type of HDR. Going back to the panel menu options, OLED Care features with this are really good. They've done a good job here. It's one of the better ones that I've seen because with some other brands, even though it's a second, third, or fourth generation panel, regardless of the panel type, they still are limited with the OLED Care features that they're offering. Sometimes they're just really basic. You have like a pixel clean, maybe one or two other options, and that's about it. Here, you're getting a lot more. You're getting the AI OLED Care suite with this, which is running a lot of these features, like the pixel clean. I really like that. That's one less thing to actually think about. And then you're getting things like pixel shift, static protection systems, brightness and tone management features with this. Just a lot more options with this than you may see on some other brands. And I think that is one thing to really consider when you're looking at an OLED, because the more features you have, the more protection you're getting against burn-in. Now, yes, eventually all OLEDs will wear out over time and that risk of burn-in is there. Eventually you're going to get it. But the more options that you have, the more systems that are there, you're going to extend the lifespan of the panel. I know for a lot of people, they're saving up a lot of money to get an OLED, and that is probably in the back of their mind. Like, I'm going to spend all this money, and then at some point, I'm going to have burn-in. That can be daunting. That can be scary. Now, you're getting the 3-year warranty, which is standard across OLEDs at this point, it kind of seems like, and that is great. But beyond that 3 years, I know for a lot of people, they may keep a monitor 6, 7, 8 years. And so that's where that kind of fear comes into play about, hey, I'm going to get this thing and then, yeah, I'm going to have that burn in and then I'm going to have to get a new monitor. I don't like that. With this, I do think if you're doing everything that you need to do, running these systems, letting this take care of the pixel clean for you, and other things like don't have a bunch of static imagery on screen, put the monitor to sleep when you're not using it, that's going to extend any high chance of burn-in out past the 5-year mark, which I think is more realistic at this point. So you're more likely to run into the risk of burn-in at the 7+ year mark if you're doing everything that you need to. Now, if you're gonna leave a bunch of static imagery on screen, you're not gonna really run the OLED Care features, you're gonna turn a lot of that stuff off, then yes, you're just speeding up that burn-in process, which, hey, if that's what you want to do with your monitor, you absolutely can. Just understand the risk with that. But for everyone else who's like, I need this thing to last as long as possible, this monitor has a great set of OLED Care features to make sure that's a reality for you. And then the last handful of smaller things that I do want to mention that I do like. This has the USB-C that you can use as a video input. I like having that option. It has a lower charging wattage to it, so it's not like you're going to most likely plug in your laptop or a handheld or something like that, but it has it where it could charge your phone if you needed it to. And then beyond this, I think the molding with the panel is really nice. especially compared to the previous generation. This thing is just overall more slim, but also more aesthetically pleasing. So I like both of those factors with this. You get all of the physical adjustments to this that you would need, plus you have the ability to mount this if you wanted to have a monitor arm with this. And then last, because I know it's going to get brought up, the text fringing with this. WOLEDs, they're using a different subpixel layout. This is RWGB, and with that, generally you will hear that it has more text fringing. I'm not noticing that really at all here with this panel. I'm noticing some text pixelation, but that's because this is a 1440p monitor, and I usually am using a 4K 27-inch. The pixel density is higher, and so with that, the overall text clarity is just better. Here, I'm noticing the pixelation, not really any text fringing at all. I would notice more on the QD OLED panels I've been reviewing lately over this one, and those really didn't have that much either. So here you don't really have to worry about the text fringing. If you're getting the pixelation and you don't like that, you can always run ClearType and increase the overall text size to help that. With the WOLEDs, the newer ones, the Tandems, those ones, it's not text fringing, because that's one of the big things they tout as being kind of like not there anymore. But the ones I've reviewed, the pixelation on the text, I even had a hard time describing it in those reviews. I was like, I don't know what it is, but this looks off to me. That you don't have to worry about here because it's not a tandem WOLED. So overall, I think the text quality here is really good. Shifting over now to the things that I don't like, or the negatives. Generally speaking, as a whole package, I would say there's nothing here outside of the fact that the claim is the 99% DCI-P3 coverage, and I did not get that. I was 5% less. And I mentioned this earlier. If it was 1, maybe 2%, it's like, okay, maybe a discrepancy between testing tools. But here it is 5%. It is much larger. I went back and I ran the test again multiple times. Maybe I did something wrong. It kept coming up 94%. So could it still potentially be my testing tool? Yes, but I think more likely it's just not hitting the claimed 99%. It still looks great. The visuals pop. They're vibrant. I don't think that's an issue. I just don't like the fact that I'm not hitting their claimed 99%, because that is the appeal of a WOLED, which is the increase in the color space or color gamut. Another issue here is the fact, and this isn't just Gigabyte, this is just an industry thing, we're seeing these terms kind of mix-matched, where it'll say color saturation or color space or color gamut, and they're using them interchangeably. And I don't think that's the right way to go about this, because it's only leading to confusion for the consumer. Outside of that, though, I don't have anything that I'm seeing with this monitor that is a standout negative. It was just, hey, they weren't hitting that mark that they claimed, even though this still looks incredible. Again, it's super vibrant. They just weren't hitting the claimed 99%. After that, we have the gray area things. These are things you may or may not care about. Here, I don't have a lot. I do like the fact that the USB-C here can be used as a video input. We don't get the higher wattage with that. That would have been nice, because then you could charge your handheld or your laptop. But with this, you don't get a KVM switch. So it can only be used as that video input. You're not going to be using it to connect your peripherals to run this to your PC, because there's no USB extension here. You actually don't even have a USB hub with this. It's just the USB Type-C. So you don't have that connectability here on top of the potential with a KVM switch to run it to multiple devices. Here it's like USB-C for a video input, a little bit of charging, but that's it. Beyond this, any of the extras that you may want are just not going to be here. We don't have built-in speakers. You don't have RGB lighting. It's kind of the bare minimum, and I think that's okay. I don't really need RGB lighting on my monitor. Can't really see it anyways. I don't use built-in speakers because I always run a headset. but I do generally like the USB hub. I want the KVM switch. I think that is a bigger draw. And so if that is something that you absolutely need, this may not be the right fit for you. The other ones, to me, kind of take it or leave it, but that's based off my needs. Whatever you may need, those may be a bigger need for you, where you're like, I have to have those extras. And if that is the case, again, you may want to look elsewhere. And then the last one here, I think this is going to be a bigger one. It's going to be the panel coating. This one isn't as glossy as that MO27. I pointed that out, but it is still glossy. For anybody that is in a room with a lot of windows, or you have a lot of lights in that room and they're constantly on, and you then happen to play darker games, watch content or movies or whatever that just has a lot of dark scenes in it, and you're gonna have those lights on, you're gonna have those windows that aren't covered, it may be an issue for you. This doesn't reflect the light as much, but it still does. You're still going to get that reflection with this. And so that to me is a bigger issue. I like the vibrancy that this panel has. I like glossy panels, but I don't think they're for everybody. So keep that in mind. That's the hard part, is if you do happen to have those things, but you're like, I still want to see it in the room. I don't know if it's going to be an issue for me. It's kind of like you got to try it and then see, and then you'll know. But I think generally speaking, anybody that has those things going on, I'm not going to recommend a glossy panel, because I think that's going to ultimately be something that's very distracting for you. But I will say this, like, true black glossy version definitely is a step in the right direction, where it does keep the glossy look, the vibrancy to it. The colors just pop on this thing compared to a matte coating, and it is reducing the reflections that you do see on the monitor by a decent amount. It's a right step towards what I think we're all hoping for, which is how can you have this glossy, but then it really won't have that reflection there. Hopefully here in the next handful of years, this only gets improved, and then we will have some that it's like 50, 60, 75% reduced when it comes to those reflections. If I'm looking at the two side by side, I still think it's pretty apparent between them. That can be dependent upon the angle that you're looking at the monitor. Just dead on, it is far more apparent with this one, and it's a good reduction. So I'm saying I can't wait to see the reduction beyond what this one has already done, because I think at that point we're going to be in a sweet spot where I won't really have to tell everybody, hey, if you have windows in your room and there's light, you're going to have to reconsider potentially getting this monitor. It's just going to be like, hey, it doesn't matter, get it, because it looks really, really good. So that is actually going to wrap it up for the gray area things, and that's going to be the end of the video here. I think this is a solid OLED. It provides a lot of upside compared to the QD OLEDs if you don't want to go that direction. The big thing here that I would consider with that as well, though, is going to be price, which I'm happy to report this is affordable like those other QD OLEDs. In fact, this is actually more affordable right now than the MO27 I've been referring to, which if you look at that third gen Samsung QD OLED panel and you look at the options that are out there, and even the second gen ones as well, you're finding them for $350 to $450, generally speaking, for most brands. Gigabyte sold out, it looked like, really quick, so theirs jumped up to like $650. So in that video, I was like, hey, if you can't find it and it's back at that $400, $450 price range, look at some of the other brands potentially, or look at the other version where it's not the 280 hertz that has, it's actually just the 240, and that one you were finding for about $400, $450. When we're looking at this monitor, it's sitting at $400 right now. Now, that of course can change. By the time you're watching this video, it may be even higher. Its normal listing price though is $500. That's still really affordable. So this is pointing towards something I've been waiting the last couple years for, which is OLEDs being affordable to the enthusiast. I don't know if somebody that just kind of casually games is going to spend a lot of money on a monitor. They may go with one that's $150, maybe $200, and it's an IPS and it has solid performance. But for the enthusiasts out there, or somebody that just has the means to get this, this is definitely a solid buy. It is a good price. This one I can easily recommend. Doesn't matter what the dislikes or the gray area things are, unless those are just make or break for you. This is a very solid buy. And with this, I'm going to assume, just like the QD OLED panel, the MO27 from Samsung there, all of those had a glossy panel. I'm assuming all of these probably have a glossy panel as well. There may be some out there, and I didn't do any in-depth digging. Gigabyte actually has some versions of the same monitor that are matte and not glossy. That may be the case here. I just haven't really had time to dig in deep to see if that's the case. But regardless, this price point, very, very good. I'm really happy to see that these are becoming more affordable for anybody that's been waiting to get their hands on an OLED. Now, I'm going to have a link for this in the description if you want to pick it up, as well as some of the other monitors that I've mentioned in this video if you want to check out those as well. If you have any questions about this that I didn't answer in this video, let me know in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the video, hit the like button for me as it helps the channel out. If you want to continue to follow along with all my content, like some of the upcoming newer OLEDs that I have coming down the pipeline right now, hit the subscribe button for me, and I'll see you in the next video.